Hi, everybody. This is Heather Alderman, your Executive Director of COSMA. And today I am going to talk to you about the COSMA accreditation process. So this means that I'm not going to go into detail on the specific steps of the process, just the process overall. So if you want to hear anything else about specific steps, then I suggest you listen to the other recordings that I have during this conference. And attend one of my or both of my Q&A sessions so we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. So I'm going to share my screen with you so that we can get this presentation going and put on the slideshow. All right, let's try that again. Okay, all right, so here we go. So something that you're going to hear if you're listening to my presentations across this conference is a focus on the big picture of COSMA accreditation, the foundations by which all of the other pieces are laid, that this is an outcomes-based and mission-driven accreditation model. And the reason I'm focusing on that is that you're going to need to know this very well. You're going to have to understand how to create and gather data from an outcomes assessment plan, and also that your mission means something, that the mission of your program, of your academic unit, is what you are trying to achieve. So you're collecting data for this. You are teaching students specific skills and specific knowledge because of that mission. So it may be a time to look at your mission and rewrite it. It may be that your mission changes over time as you respond to sport industry or to student needs. So this is why I focus on this and come back to it. We also did not just make up our accreditation principles out of thin air. It is based on best practices in sport management education. And we have a list of about 25 characteristics of excellence in sport management education. And from that, all of the criteria by which your program is being reviewed is based on those best practices. Also, this is a developmental process. So I want you to know, if this is the first time you've ever had to be in charge of getting accreditation, or if you know that you're not doing the best that you can at this time, we know this is for all of the programs. It's a developmental process. So we will ask you to submit materials on an annual basis in order to show that you are using data that you're collecting and that you are making improvements, and that it's about the improvement. It's not about some bar that you're going to reach and then you can just kind of coast. It's not about that at all. And last but not least is the flexibility that's inherent in this process. So while today I'm going to talk to you about all those different steps in the accreditation process, the flexibility of a small program versus a big program going through this process is absolutely possible. There is a lot of wiggle room, a lot of room for you to tell us what you're doing in your program, and for us to understand the degree to which that's meeting our requirements and the principles. All right, you will always be able to rely on myself to help you go through this process. So I recommend you talk to me as often and as in-depth as you need or want to. This is my job. This is what I'm here to do for you and with you. And the more we talk and the more I understand what you fully understand and what areas you're not as sure about, then I'm happy to help. We have manuals, you can certainly read them, but it's not always that every single decision or every single thing is located in the manual. So I'm here to provide that assistance for you. Some programs use this process to try to leverage resources and to advocate for their program within your institution, and that is absolutely a legitimate thing that can happen. So I just want you to know that we acknowledge that as well. And it's not like you have to pretend that you don't need anything or that everything is 100% okay. We also provide you with some templates that you will be able to use. So this would include required templates, meaning you have to follow a specific order of information. This is very specific to our outcomes assessment plan, but the other templates are just documents that have been stripped down to ask the questions that you need to answer, for example, for your self-study document. We also provide examples for good rubrics or rubrics that measure measure something clearly. There are many examples on the internet, so I recommend a Google search. There are different organizations and definitely different universities that have some excellent rubric examples. Something else that I hope means something to you and to the individuals in your university is that COSMA has gone through its own accreditation process with the Council for Higher Education Accreditation, or CHIA. So the terminology they use is that COSMA is a recognized specialized accreditor. So I have gone through this process as well. So it has increased my empathy for all of you doing all of this writing, but we have standards that COSMA needs to stay up with. And I also am reporting regularly and making decisions with those standards in mind about how we can make decisions across programs that are based on the same kind of information. So I keep all of these things in mind, and it is a part of the external accountability that not only applies to COSMA, but then applies to your programs as well. Many programs also let me know that they love this process because it actually has provided them with an enhanced reputation on their campus or within their region, or with some sport industry partners. So that's a positive that I think can really make a program shine. And also, like I mentioned, and I will do it again, that this is really about development, about continuous improvement, not about achieving some bar and then staying right at that bar. So one thing, as you start the accreditation process that, that COSMA will focus on initially is what programs, what sport management programs do you have, and what are you including in this accreditation process? And I'll just say that you must include all of your sport management programs in the process. You cannot leave one out just because you don't feel like putting it through the process. And the reason for that is that this is something that is open to the public. The public needs to know, it's their right to know what is accredited and what is not accredited. So if you have a bachelor's degree and you have 2 different concentrations, depending on the number of differences between the core classes for those different concentrations, you will be presenting those as either 1 degree program or as 2 separate degree programs with different concentrations. You may also have the same situation if you have a master's degree with multiple concentrations, or a doctoral degree with different pathways or whatever it's called at your institution. But regardless, all of those programs must be included. And you can see here on this slide some of the criteria that we use to determine what constitutes a sport management program. So it does have, of course, some broad parameters. If there is a sport, a degree program with the sport in its title, let's say sport communications, and it's in the communications department, and really or maybe it's sport and communications, and they take 1 or 2 classes within your department, or they teach a little bit that has to do with sport. That is not a degree program. Now, the title might be considered to be misleading. So on a case-by-case basis, the Board of Commissioners would look at that sort of thing, and they would not fault your department for that degree. But we have had circumstances where, for example, we have asked that the university look at the name of the degree program, especially one with sport in the title that has really very little to do with sport, and try to get that name changed. So there is a conversation that you would have with the Board of Commissioners if you have a circumstance that would warrant that. We do ask that that your sport management department is an identifiable entity, that you're not just one faculty person teaching some classes, but you're not a department. And how that is determined will be, again, on a case-by-case basis, as there are many departments that are headed just by one person. It's not about the one person, it's about whether it's an entity. Is this its own separate entity that you will be putting through this accreditation process. Certainly you may offer your program, you may offer your degrees. Maybe there are some collaborative relationships you have with other departments, and like a business department that isn't, you're not housed in that school. So we'll talk about that as well. And then of course we want to include any mode by which your program is delivered. So online, hybrid, and we're dealing with a lot of that right now with COVID, but also on campus. And then any physical location where the degree is earned. So if you have satellite campuses, or perhaps there is a university outside of the United States that offers your institution's degree in sport management, we need to know about that. It's not that you can't go through the process. It's more like we want to be upfront right away that this is the circumstance that we're dealing with. So what happens in many departments of sport management is that it's not like they're static or, and that you just have your 1 or 2 degree programs and that's it. There may be a lot of change you may add, you may take away some programs. There may be changes in programs where you have included it in the process, but later you may not include it. So we ask that on a regular basis, you keep us apprised of that. So of course, if you do create a new program and you've either already started or are far along in the accreditation process, you would work with me to understand how you would get that new program to start going through the process, and then eventually have those programs sync up. And the reason for that is for you to not go crazy with paperwork and things in different places, to save money and to make it very clear and make sure we understand where we are with your department. So if you wanted to exclude something that appeared to be like a sport management program but wasn't, you would work with me to provide a rationale for what to include and what not to include. So I said we have a bunch of templates. We do have some checklists as well to help you with different parts of the process. But one is what we call a scope of accreditation checklist. It's not a required document, but it is a way to outline what programs exist, what the core classes are, where they're housed, how many students are enrolled, et cetera, et cetera. And what it does is it follows our procedures. So if you would be reading along with the accreditation process document, you would see that this checklist mirrors that. And all of these items here on this slide about providing a rationale to either include or exclude a program follows that process. So it's all written down. It's not like I'm making this up here in this presentation to you. However, that isn't always the easiest way to read something. So I'm trying to distill it here. As I have also mentioned, one of the more important pieces of understanding what is or what is not accredited is the marketing side of things. What does the public see? How do they, if I Google it, and I will Google your institution, and I see 6 or 7 programs pop up, how do I know what's accredited or not? So we want to make sure that if we're going to exclude something, that information is very separate and it's very clear it's not accredited. And when things are accredited, of course, you want to advertise that. You want everybody to know that that's the case. So this is the list of the steps in the accreditation process, literally from joining as a member and paying the annual fee to a decision by the Board of Commissioners. So this is these are the list of the steps that I'm going to talk about in detail. And if you want to know more about candidacy status, number 2, I have a presentation about that at this conference. And if you want to know more information about writing that self-study document, there's also a presentation about that as well. So I'm not going to go in the super nitty-gritty detail on that because this is about the process. But you can see you start by filling out an application for membership, and then you begin by providing a little bit of information. And then you write a self-study, you have a site visit, you then have a decision made by the Board of Commissioners. All right, so there is an application for membership. It's not difficult. It is asking to make sure that your university or college is allowed to confer degrees. So one of the CHIA recognition standards is that a specialized accreditor must only accredit programs in institutions that are legally authorized to confer degrees. So usually for the US based programs, that would be you show us that you have that regional accreditation. And for programs outside the US, there may be a governmental entity or an education based entity that provides that security that you are indeed conferring degrees legally. You do need to pay your dues. You can join though at any time, and every quarter those dues are prorated. And what I'm trying to do there is just sync everybody up into our fiscal year, which goes from July 1 to June 30th, which really mirrors a lot of your own budgets. If you need to prepay or post pay, or we can talk about all of that, and we're pretty flexible with those kinds of things. But that's a part of showing that you are making a commitment to enter this process. You really don't provide a lot of information in the application, some basic enrollment data. You do need the signature of the president or CEO of the institution. So if that takes a while to get, try to do that early. And then when you become a member, you are assigned to a commissioner from the Board of Commissioners. So that is the body that makes the accreditation decisions. And what this assignment means is that this person is sort of following you through the process. They are not the only one who makes decisions or looks at your materials, but they're spearheading the effort, and they can be there to consult with you if you need that. Candidacy status. I will go through this briefly, but as I said, there is another presentation that goes into it in detail. But this process allows you to really get your feet wet, to really begin to get an understanding of the accreditation process. So it's, again, kind of like this scope of accreditation. It's a conversation with the Board of Commissioners. So you are saying, this is what we plan to do with our outcomes assessment plan. Or we are doing outcomes assessment, and here is what we're doing, and this is how it fits into COSMA's requirements. And so the board can look at your student learning outcomes. They can look at operational effectiveness goals, which are goals that you have for your department, your academic unit as a whole. And they can look at the measurement tools that you have outlined and that you've provided samples of, and they can say, well, these rubrics match. We think the data that you collect will actually help you to measure these student learning outcomes and these operational effectiveness goals. They may suggest other things like, oh, have you thought about using graduation rates as a metric that will help you understand a goal that you have. So there are not right or wrong answers, but it is a conversation. And they want to make sure you have a good understanding of the process so that when you're writing your self-study and when you have your site visit, you're more comfortable, you know what's going on, and you're ready to really embrace this. And if and when you're accredited, then you can do your annual reporting. So when you have been granted candidacy status, you then have up to 5 years to go through the whole process. So that would be 5 years to write your self-study, have a site visit, and then allow the time for the commissioners to be making that accreditation decision. So I will help you with knowing what that is. Most people, once you're kind of starting this work, once you get that granted stamp, you're going to start working on your self-study and not wait the 5 years. But if you need to delay things because you're changing your curriculum or you're doing something that's a little bit more substantive, just keep talking to me, and you will be continuing to provide some information on that in your annual report. So we will know about that. But the last bullet there does show you some of the pieces of the candidacy status application that you'll provide. So the biggest part, of course, is that outcomes assessment plan. And the other parts are just like little pieces that relate to the 8 principles of accreditation. Oh, look, here they are. If you haven't memorized these, you probably will, but these are the 8 principles, and this is the documentation that you're going to provide for that self-study the writing of the self-study. So that is, the larger document where you're really fleshing out what you have learned from your outcomes assessment process, what kind of strategic planning you do, on what cycle, how you use that information, how it's tied into what's happening at your university, the curriculum from the general education requirements to those sport management core classes to any electives that you have, any other minors that you might require, not require, etc. So I'm not going to go through all of that. That is for another presentation. So let's say you have submitted your self-study document. I've reviewed it. I've given you some feedback, or I've said to you, I think we should start planning your site visit. I will talk a little bit about all of these items here. The site visit must occur 90 days before the commissioners would be meeting to make a decision. And the reason for that is so that you have time to look at the report that's written, and I'll talk about that, and that you can make adjustments, or you can demonstrate then to the commissioners what your plan is for, say, coming into compliance with something that you're not in compliance with, or you're partially compliant with. So it's not to drag it out and make it annoying for you. It's really to give you time. There's just a little bit of flexibility there. Again, I'll work with you on that, but we try to give people time to respond to things. So the costs, and I think I will talk about this soon, there are costs associated with the site visit. The site visit only occurs every 7 years. So it's not an annual budgeting thing. It's not a big chunk of money that you're going to have to come up with every year. The only cost of this accreditation process that is annual is that annual fee that I mentioned before. But you and I will talk about scheduling. Usually we have a site visit maybe on a Monday, Tuesday, or a Thursday, Friday. It's usually 2 days. It depends on how complex your program is. Maybe if you have multiple sites or lots of degree programs, we may either add a person or add a day. We will talk about that, because certainly we want to keep the costs down and we want to keep everything streamlined. Usually there are 2 site visitors. So that's the general rule of thumb. I will be working with the Board of Commissioners to make those site visit team assignments. When I come up with people who can not only make the date, but are a good match for your program and a good match as a team, I will check with you to make sure that you do not know those individuals, or that you have no conflict of interest with them. And that goes for any faculty in your program. So this is trying to keep this as peers, but not peers that you're in a business arrangement with, or that you used to work with last year, somebody that's going to be more objective. And then that commissioner who is assigned to your program will act as an observer. So ultimately, they will not actually vote on the accreditation decision for your program. And they are not observing you, they're observing the team. So they're there to make sure that the team is doing their job appropriately. They definitely can answer questions about the accreditation process, but they're not leading any discussions, asking questions, writing the report, nothing like that. And then what you will do is, and it's probably you if you're watching this and you're the one who's in charge of the accreditation process, you will be the campus coordinator. And all that means is that you will work with the site visit team to help arrange the site visit, to help them understand how they're going to travel, where they're going to stay, how they're going to get to and from campus, if they need a parking permit, what are they going to eat, when's that going to happen, you're going to come up with the site visit schedule, that kind of stuff. So as you can see down that list, there will be a site visit schedule, and I'll run through a sample of that. You can provide some additional materials to the team when they're there electronically. Usually you would be able to link to various pages of your university's website for things like catalog and faculty qualifications, maybe even faculty handbook, things like that. And then when the site visit is over, you will be receiving a site visit report, but I will send you an evaluation, and it is very important for you to fill that out. This is how I understand any dynamics that happened on your visit that were not appropriate. And also just to know from your point of view what you suggest could make things better. How did communication between myself and you go? Was it enough? Was it too much? Did you know what was going to happen? Or just any ideas you have based on your experiences with other accrediting bodies about how things could be done. So that's what the purpose of that is. So here is a list of the both fixed cost and then an estimated cost of variable costs for the site visit. So we estimate them to be $3,800, and you can see that $2,200 of that are fixed costs. They can be paid in advance. They can be paid by credit card. They can be paid by check. And then the variable costs are going to be those that the site visitors incur by renting a car or using a vehicle to drive to your site. They may have to pay for some meals where you're not there to directly pay for it. The easiest thing is for you to pay for things like the hotel and the travel through your own process. And then what's going to happen is to reimburse, to pay that honorarium and to reimburse the site visitors, you will be invoiced through COSMA, and then COSMA pays the site visitors directly. So I am the middle person through that process. So what's the point of having a site visit? Well, we need to utilize a method to validate what you've written in your self-study. So you can write anything you want, but we need to make sure that that is true. Some of that validation will be through interviews, talking to you and your colleagues and other stakeholders and students and administrators to sort of see what the story is. And then also to look up on your website and make sure all those things match. There's also a benefit to having other faculty in sport management look at your program, give you ideas about what you're doing well, praising you on things that are done well, and providing some suggestions for ways you might come into compliance with COSMA principles. The site reviewers themselves are not giving you just their opinion or, oh, my program does it this way, therefore all the programs must. That is not appropriate. And if that happens, I would like to know. What they're there to do, though, is they are in a similar circumstance. They are in your field. They understand the pushes and the pulls and the demands. So they will be able to review your program to a good degree. And it's a very nice collegial process. This is not a negative or nitpicky process. It is an outside perspective. This is something where people without the same stake, either emotionally or professionally, in reviewing your program. So they are looking at our documents, and their decision, their writing, their interpretation is based upon those documents. It's not, again, just based on, this is what I think and this is my opinion. And then, I've talked a little bit about that commissioner observer and that, and also those evaluations and training that I provide to the site visitors. Those are all ways in which we attempt to establish certain consistency in those reviews. So it doesn't mean that it is a robotic process, but it means that the standards that others are held to, so will you. So at the end of your site visit, or very much usually at the end, you will have an exit interview with your site team, and they're basically going to share with you the pros, the cons, the things that you're doing well, and some areas that you're going to need to improve upon, and that they're going to write up in a site visit report. So once you get that report, you've heard all of the information that's going to be included in it, and so you will not be surprised. There is a member of your site visit team is considered to be the team chair. They are taking the lead in these in this site visit. And so from a template, they will be writing up the findings from the site visit. And they're, of course, working with the other site team member, how they organize the writing of that report is up to them. But you're going to see a sort of summary paragraph. You're going to see, and this is per principal, so 8 different pages. You're going to see a list of bulleted items that talk about what's going really well, what you're doing great in your program. And then they're going to have an area where it talks about things that you could do to make it better. So basically recommendations. This is not weaknesses per se, but they're objectively, being able to see where connections could be made or things that you could do to strengthen your program. And then if there are any areas they think are non-compliant, that will go in there as well. And then it's going to be very clear. There will be what we call action items, and those are items that you must respond to in your rejoinder, which is the part of the materials that the board's going to look through. So once you have that site visit team is, they write the report, but they're not in contact with you anymore. They are not there to assist you or to advise you. They are done. So they will have kept all of your materials in confidence, and then they will get rid of them. So your rejoinder, this is your opportunity to demonstrate compliance to anything that the site visit team thought might have been out of compliance. It's also a chance to take all of those recommendations and indicate what you might do with them, or say, this is a great idea, we're going to implement it, we have implemented it, or it's a great idea, but we're going to implement it in a slightly different way, and this is what we're going to do. So you review the site visit for the accuracy based upon what you're aware of that they are going to, that the site visit team explained to you when they were in person. These are the things we're going to say in our report. But if something's inaccurate or wrong, let me know, because we will certainly make a change to the report or indicate that there were some errors in the report. And then you will be clearly told how to respond to the report and by when and what's going to happen. I'm happy to review what you're submitting to, I'm not the sort of content expert. I'm not saying, oh, this will get you accredited. That is not appropriate and not my role, but I might say, it looks like you answered the question. It looks like you sort of answered the question. You didn't answer the question at all, that kind of thing. And I might be able to provide some information to help you know how to respond in a way that could be reasonable. 3 months is not a very long amount of time to make changes or to indicate that you're going to be implementing changes. And that is absolutely understood. So that's another part of things where if a change will take a year or 2 to happen, that's going to need to be explained, and that is okay. All right, so you're going to get your report, and then what happens after that is your self-study, the site visit report, and then your rejoinder. All of that goes to the Board of Commissioners. So they read all of those materials, and that observer is leading this process. They were there. So, we have things that are written down, and then you have things that happened in person, and that person can clarify. They can say, oh, I know what this means, or this is the context around which this was discussed. So they are going to help lead that, but everybody will talk about it and talk about the accreditation of your program. So there are a few possible decisions that the commissioners may make at their meeting. And to say this, they meet twice a year in person. And I understand we have a pandemic right now. So we are meeting virtually, but basically there are 2 meetings during which they make accreditation decisions. Many of the other processes can happen outside of those 2 meetings. They meet in February and they meet in September. Those dates are always, as soon as we know what they are located on the website, and all of the deadlines that are set are such that you and the commissioners can all prepare for those meetings. So the accreditation decisions that can be made range from you're accredited, but there are some areas that we want you to report on. We want you to submit materials to show you're in compliance with some areas that might be not in compliance. And that's accreditation with notes. So those notes relate back to those action items that you would have received in your site visit report. It might be that you responded appropriately and you also need to continue to report back until that is resolved. That's totally normal. Most programs have notes when they're accredited. Observations are directly linked to the recommendations that were made in your site visit report. And those are the sort of nice to haves, you're highly recommended to respond to them because that's about that continuous improvement process, but you're not out of compliance. It's just something that can help make your program better. Now, there may be a circumstance under which a program is out of compliance with some areas, and that change making circumstance will take longer to take effect, or you can't make a change right now, or there's got to be some discussions within your own university. So it may be that the commissioners are not able to make a decision, so they would defer making a decision. So it's not an action, it's not a negative action, it's also not a positive action, it's just no action. So what they're saying is we need more information, and they will write a letter that indicates what information they need and by when, and then they can at another meeting in the future make an accreditation decision. Usually it's the next meeting or perhaps a year, depending on what you need to show that you're in compliance. And then there may be circumstances where you're not in compliance with a number of principles, and it's not because information is missing. And under those circumstances, the decision may be to deny accreditation. So believe me, I work with you to try to not have that circumstance occur. It's really not about being denied, but there certainly are ceilings and thresholds for that circumstance to occur. All right, so I've talked a little bit about this already, but let's say you're accredited, yay, and you have some notes. So even if you don't have any notes or observations, you will be providing an annual report to COSMA. And let me also emphasize that this is required of all programs, regardless of your accreditation status. So if you are a member, you filled out that initial form, you paid your dues, and you're working on your candidacy status application, you're going to have a pretty easy time of it when it comes to doing your annual report, but you have to submit one. And if you're in candidacy status, that's a great time to say, hey, we've collected data on our outcomes assessment plan. Here's the data. Here's what it means to us. We're working on our self-study. Any feedback, so it's about that. So I've indicated here various areas that you would be reporting in your annual report. I send you the document. I remind you to send in the document. It's usually due at July 31st each year. If you need an extension, you would need to talk to me about that. There are rules about that. And you also need to update your website, especially if you are accredited, to indicate the most recent data from your outcomes assessment plan. And that's something that you'll learn a lot about once you're going through the process and become accredited. All right, so now you know what to do. You understand the steps of the process and how they kind of connect together to move you through the accreditation process. Everybody's submitting annual reports, so you get used to the document, you understand what it's asking for, and you're preparing for the time when that reporting will be more substantive. And then at any time, there are many different types of training that you could get when we're all in person again. It's I think best. I do recommend that you come to my Q&A session. I'm going to have a couple of them, one on each day, and I am not necessarily just answering questions that are about this presentation or about any of the others that I've recorded for this conference. I will answer anything. And the best thing that is so useful, and I get a lot of feedback that it's useful, just bring your very specific information or questions you have about your program and its structure and the personalities and the programs and the internship and the classes, because it will help everybody. And while when we're together, you can then easily talk to each other. We will do our best to try to collaborate and get those cross conversations going. We'll do our best. But anyway, please come to those sessions. So thank you. And I hope you're enjoying all of the presentations during this conference. And I will see you in the Q&A.